We are back with more of the tier list. We are going into high tier. These are all the characters you would consider to have really good shots at making long tournament runs. Maybe not tournament winners, but also a lot of tournament winners because we already had some tournament winners in the mid tier. So let's get into the first character into high tier, which is going to be Rosalina Luma. Rosalina took a long time to actually get relevant because this character is incredibly difficult. One of the most technically demanding characters, especially in neutral in the game, with a huge plethora of attack cancels and a bunch of setups with how to make Luma go certain directions and a bunch of these different little combos that honestly don't do that much. But the thing is, hitting this character is so difficult. I feel like a lot of times now we are focusing on either really strong advantage or really good disadvantage. She can kill you with edge guarding. Her up air is really good. Of course, she does a decent amount of damage with juggles. She has, of course, neutral air to kind of cover long spaces. Like if you try to like directional air dodge around her, she can just nair and hit you. And of course, because she's so floaty, a lot of times when you are trying to hit her, if you did kill Luma, she can just kind of like jump to a platform, jump around twice, and suddenly Luma's back because she takes 3 to 5 seconds to land. This character definitely plays a war of attrition, which is why you see DaBuzz really flourish with this character because he's one of the best players in the world at that. And this character has like a weird meta matchup spread, right? I feel like before she was worse because there were a lot more like Roy's doing really well, and Roy was one of her worst matchups. But Al actually has a decent amount of good matchups in the top tier. She does pretty decent versus Steve, even though she doesn't win. She probably beats Game & Watch. She does well versus the fighting game characters. She does well versus like the rushdown characters other than like the really, really good ones like Fox and Roy. Kind of has like her section of this is a bad matchup in meta and then has a section of this is a good matchup in the meta. So if you go to like a major, you have a high likelihood of maybe running into one of your problem matchups, but a lot of also good matchups considering the character differentials are kind of splitting. Like less people are playing Aegis, I feel like more people are playing Sonic in Game & Watch, and Steve, and Rosa does decent versus those characters. Basically, this character is just a huge knowledge check when it comes to playing against her, and of course, you know, us as the opponents of the Rosalina players will never know as much as the Rosalina players themselves, so we're going to get checked probably once to 7 times, maybe like a stock with random little things, and then by the time you learn enough to like maybe do well, you lose, and then the next time you play a Rosalina player, they have new tricks and new setups, so it's really, really difficult to stay ahead of this character. Next up is the character with probably the biggest jump in my tier list from last time. We're going Ice Climbers. I kind of used to view things as, oh, you have a lot of bad matchups. You can't be a good character because you'll run into them at some point. But then suddenly, again, the meta kind of shifted, like I talked about with Rosalina. Ice Climbers' bad matchups aren't super common, although Steve is. There have been a lot of Ice Climbers doing really well recently, in spite or regardless of a lot of their bad matchups. Because again, Ice Climbers' matchup spread is very polarized, and you have some incredibly good matchups, like against most of the close range characters like Fox, Brawler, Game & Watch, and then you have the really bad matchups in terms of like the Belmonts and Snake and Steve. But if you can run into a tournament or have a tournament where you're not running into those bad matchups, you can do really well, and we've seen that because of the plethora of times that Big D has got in top 8s or better than that. It is kind of insane to see a character that like technically has a bunch of bad matchups and a bunch of exploits just be able to do really well. And you know, Ice Climbers definitely has a place in the meta. They do so much damage. They have a crazy advantage. They have good neutral. They have a bunch of setups. Again, it's like a knowledge check, and if you're not ready, you're gonna die at 50 or 60 because that's just what the character does. We return to an up-and-coming player, and by up-and-coming player, I mean a player that got second at a major this year, boasting the Incineroar. This character should not be good, right? Slow, doesn't have like amazing frame data, has an exploitable recovery, but also this character gets into players' heads. The side Bs, the early kills, the edge guarding. This character is terrifying, so if you aren't a 100% composed player, you're going to struggle. SkyJ has won so many bad matchups because he rattles the opponent, because he gets those 1 or 2 reads, and again, in a meta where a lot of times people are trying to extend their life by like not getting hit in the scary places, Incineroar will hit you in the scary places. He will read you in the corner because you're backing up because you don't want to fight the Incineroar, and then you're going to die at 75. You have to be careful of how you play advantage, because if you're wrong and you get revenged, suddenly that 75 death percent threshold becomes 50, or that down tilt will combo into forward tilt at 30 and kill you. He's terrifying. Again, can you exploit this character and make him look really bad? Absolutely. You can do that with most characters though. So Incineroar isn't really special in that regard. And then the character has really good two-framing, of course, you know, strong advantage as long as you don't have really, really high airspeed. So yeah, Incineroar pretty good, pretty scary. I would definitely give him an 8 out of 10 at this point in the game. Again, theoretically, he's more in the 7s, but he's so scary that it doesn't really matter. He's becoming a really popular counterpick character, so he's becoming more and more prevalent in the meta, which is so weird to say because I thought this character would kind of stay in relative obscurity, but he's not. I've been hyping up a lot of these characters, being like, yeah, they're better than I expected. This character, in my opinion, sucks. Asterisk, relative to a lot of the places that most people put him, we're going Sephiroth. Sephiroth, of course, has his place in the meta, right? He is really good at walling people out. He has a good matchup with Steve, which is pretty rare in this game, but I feel like he just kind of struggles. A lot of Sephiroth is playing really good neutral and just hoping that people don't parry or that you're able to sneak in your frame 15 to 17 moves consistently to beat your opponent, which is pretty difficult. This character's frame data is just a big struggle. I think he overall has the worst frame data in the game, or at least somewhere around that. Of course, that doesn't mean he's without strengths, right? He is high tier. He has ridiculous two framing. He has Side B, which is a projectile that beats projectiles and kind of sets up some unique situations. He's pretty difficult to edge guard if you're not getting him off stage like at really low angles. If he gets one wing, you're not really edge guarding him. It's really difficult to two frame him, and of course he is probably the best character at ledge play in the game because of his like forward air poking the wall. So it's really difficult to keep him in the corner, which is probably his biggest advantage. That, and of course one wing is ridiculous, but again, he's not always going to be getting one wing on equal stocks. Sometimes it does last a long time. I don't feel like it's enough for me to put him in top tier. I just see this character struggling with a lot of the meta because they're faster, or they have better advantages, or they just like out mobility him, or just kill him at ridiculously low percents with like a 0 to death. I don't really know his matchup spread. I don't see that many Sephiroths do particularly well nowadays because Ken mostly plays Sonic now, Tweak mostly plays Diddy Kong, Ned I think is switching to Cloud, so lost a lot of his high level reps, but I just think this character overall isn't just like controlling the game the way a lot of people talk about him controlling the game, so that's why I put him in like the lower high tier area. Europe, get out your pitchforks, we're talking about Greninja. Greninja. Great combos, good advantage, decent edge guarding. He of course has one of the unique edge guarding tools in his up B or hydro pump. He's really mobile on the ground, right? So he has great ground movement. So if you lose to ground movement, you lost to Greninja. But of course, I do think that the lack of a normal grab, therefore his out of shield options being bad, in general, unless you're just going to footstool downer everyone for almost no damage in this game, that's not really good enough in my opinion. His short hop is kind of high. It's hard to go over things unless you're going to hard read these things. Like you can't react and like, oh, they're going to do this and jump over it and hit them because your short hop is too high to actually hit a lot of those landing aerials. On someone doing like a fast poke, like a Pika or Mithra, down tilt, some of the faster dash attacks, it's hard to do. But that doesn't mean the character doesn't have stuff, right? You have dash attack into combos, you have down tilt into up smash, down tilt into forward air, dash attack into forward air. You know, you get a lot of pretty early kills with this character. Of course, he has a counter, so on some recoveries that are a little slower but have hitboxes on them, you can counter and spike your opponent. He can deal with some projectiles by countering them and kind of going into them. He has like some uniquely good matchups with like Game & Watch because that matchup is just really good because up air drag down kind of gets so much damage on Game & Watch. I remember Stroder beating Meister like a long time ago before the pandemic. But again, I just basically, Greninja's one of those characters that like is really good but kind of just gets outclassed by the people above him. It's not really like Greninja is bad. It's just like Greninja is good, but these people are better. So yeah, I think he has some flaws, but like every character in high tier has some flaws still, but he's pretty good. He's a good character. We're staying blue daba dee daba die, and this character will make you die. We're talking Megaman. Megaman has been having a resurgence recently in the past like 6 to 9 months. You have Peebnut doing really well, MPG's doing really well, Tweak was playing the character for a little bit. I don't know if that's staying. I think Kamame's been playing Megaman a little bit more recently as well. This character is like really unique in terms of their meta position because they do good versus some characters, but do awful versus others. I know Mario and Pikachu are both really bad matchups for Megaman, but at the same time, characters like Roy and Joker, they do decent against. They have good out of shield options. Metal Blade is always interesting. They have good disadvantage because of Leaf Shield, because the Leaf Shield is just a broken move. Weird pressure with up airs, and you know, he's always kind of an off tempo compared to a lot of the characters in this game. He has a lot of tricks up his sleeve, like the Leaf Shield, Metal Blade, toss cancel into grab. We've seen the like MPG and Peebnut have great success with that. Again, the biggest problem I do have with Megaman is he doesn't really have a clutch factor other than like Metal Blade into up tilt, which is decent decently easy to play around now that more item characters are common in the meta. People are more used to it now, as opposed to like it was just Rob, but the Robs weren't good enough to really be scared of it, and Diddy Kong wasn't relevant before. I don't know, Megaman is a character that, you know, nickels and dimes his way into victories. Of course, has decent edge guarding, you know, good setups and stuff like that, so I'm not pretending this character has nothing, but I feel like a lot of the characters above have, like, better combos, so if you're not playing the perfect neutral, kind of like what I said with Sephiroth, if you're not playing the perfect neutral and consistently outplaying your opponent, you might just and take 80, and that's not very good for him. He does have an exploitable recovery, unless they just recover high in Leaf Shield and the person can't beat Leaf Shield with an up air. But yeah, Megaman is honestly kind of scary. Like, personally, I'm not scared of him because Pika has a good matchup, but I don't think a lot of people want to see Megamans in their path, so that must mean something's good about them, right? This character has been called the most honest character in Smash Ultimate, with nothing excelling, and they are all, of course, wrong. We're talking about Pit. I have thought Pit is pretty good for a while. I think I put him in mid-tier in my last tier list, to be honest, like upper mid-tier, like kind of like in this area, but then Zachary happened. Listen, I love Zachary, I may be biased, but he showed that this character actually has some ridiculous strengths. Of course, the neutral of this character has always been above average, and I think people saying otherwise is kind of ridiculous. You have a great dash attack, good dashes in general, a good dash grab, and of course, one of the best neutral airs in the game. Like, in neutral, it's amazing. It is safe on shield, it's like -5 if you do it perfectly, I think. It is a combo move at lower percents into dash attack, it sends into really good positions otherwise. This character just has a lot of damage output, not necessarily in true combos, but he has a really good advantage. Multiple jumps will kind of lead you there. But this character, honestly, where they shine, surprisingly, is their advantage. I always thought their advantage was kind of mid. Zachary showed off like kind of ledge trapping with back air and dash attack, making it really, really difficult for his opponents to get back to ledge, even characters with good disadvantages. He's been making people struggle on the ledge because of that back air dash attack. Of course, like you then have like the forward throw versus down throw mix-ups at higher percents, whether you're going to DI in and get down throw up aired because you were DIing in for forward throw, or you're DIing out for down throw, and then you get forward thrown at 120 and die. But the character just like is positioned really well in the meta. I don't think he has any terrible matchups. I don't think he has any really like dominant matchups, but at the same time, that means that you as a player can just beat your opponent basically in any matchup. Like, I can't imagine, I don't know what the worst matchup for Pit is. I would think someone like Sonic, but at the same time, Zachary has like a winning record on every Sonic he's played in Japan, and you know, I'm pretty sure he's beat T, he's beat a lot of the Japanese top players. I don't know if he's played Mia. I think he's weird to counterpick, but that doesn't mean he's not amazing to main, because he doesn't really lose to anyone that bad. He can just win all the time. Put your phones away and take out your textbooks. We're talking about Hero next, the only character that you have to literally read. He's an amazing anti-zoner. Hero beats literally every zoner in the game. You know, if you're running away from Hero, that means that Hero's able to get buffs like Oomph, Acceleratle, Bounce. He's able to heal, he's able to throw out like unreactable moves that do 30%. He has good out-of shield options in terms of his up B out of shield mostly. It's just a get off me option, and Hero mostly needs get off me options to roll his spells, get buffs or good other things, and make it difficult. Of course, having to look away from the game itself to look at his menu, both as the hero player and the opponent of the hero, is really awkward, and it kind of makes you feel uncomfortable, because if you just decide to be lazy and you're like, I don't want to read that one, that's going to be the thwack that kills you at 40% because he got good RNG. That's going to be the sizzle that you couldn't react to, or the kaboom that kills you at 80 because you were DIing wrong. It's one of those, like, in theory he's not as good as this, but because of what he does in a tournament setting against these players, by making you scared, making you have to read, making you uncomfortable, it is really, really stressful to play against Hero, kind of like Incineroar, except then he has a sword and, you know, has decent mobility and can have amazing mobility sometimes, beats all the zoners in the game. Like, the character does struggle a little bit in the mid-range, like if you're just playing passive mid-range, like close enough that you can run up and hit them for going from menu, but far enough away that they're not really able to do things like forward tilt or dash attack or forward air or stuff like that. It's just hard to stay composed in that, because if you're wrong once and you like dash in and you get flame slash because you were a little too slow, that's gonna be rough. Or get like snoozed into forward smash at 50 and die, that kind of sucks. Get back into Street Fighter, because we are talking about the second Shoto being Ryu. I do think Ryu is a bit better than Ken, right? This is like 8 or 9 characters of a gap. Results-wise, the Ryus are doing significantly better, because you have Ashimo doing amazing in Japan, consistently getting like top 8 at their majors and super majors. Aiken, who did really well in his European tour, got like second at a European major recently. I think also like got like 9th or 13th at Terra, so like still did pretty good. Consistent damage, of course, has the auto turnaround, so rolls are useless versus him him, and cross-ups are useless versus him. He has a comeback factor, right? Because he has rage and he does a ton of damage with his combos, so you're never really comfortable versus him. Ridiculous output or damage output, has good projectiles, so he can kind of play the zoning game if, you know, the person doesn't really have any. Has, again, decent matchups in the top tier, especially against the, you know, close quarter combat characters like Fox and Mario. His killing is super consistent because it is harder to SDI out of his moves compared to Ken, so like down tilt into Tatsu, down tilt into Shoryu, you are going to kill a lot earlier, and it can be a struggle to keep away from this character, legitimately. Even though he isn't fast, he controls so much space just with his neutral air and with his buttons that it's kind of hard to run up on him. It's kind of hard to run away from him unless you're just blatantly only trying to run away the entire game. But I don't think a lot of characters have large amounts of success with that. So I don't know, he's good. He's a good spot in the meta. I think Ryu's really solid. Again, he's not as good or explosive as the other two fighting game characters, so he's still lower than them, but he's a really good character. Speaking of explosive, we have the Smash 4 Devil in Bayonetta. This character has been getting a lot better results. This character has their meta developing, right? All the combos and like single hit uppies are becoming relevant again, which, God, I don't want that to happen. Does a ton of damage, and everyone was always like, oh, the damage doesn't matter because they don't kill you. And then the Bayonettas are starting to learn how to kill people that aren't playing very, very passive all the time, which means that now that 80% does matter. Of course, if you run into a witch time, you're gonna die early. You can get edge guarded, but if you're like an ultimate pro, I don't know if you have all of those SDI flowcharts down or like just like understanding it inherently, because that's honestly a lot of information and very difficult, and we needed to know that in Smash 4 or we died at 0, whereas like Bayonetta kills you at like 40 sometimes, or like if you get caught in a platform or something like that. She kind of like plays the mental game with you, of course has a good disadvantage because she can just ABK and dive kick around. You know, she does have that extra lag when she uses more special moves, but it's still like most characters aren't really going to be able to run across the entire stage and hit her. That's pretty unique to like the very fast characters like Fox, Sonic, Pika, stuff like that. But I think her good edge guarding kind of puts her in a more explosive spot in the meta, because edge guarding, in my opinion, is really valuable, because if you can lower the amount of time that your opponent is alive, that would be really good. And she can do that without necessarily killing your opponents off of the top, just with like slow and steady edge guards. Again, she's kind of difficult to ledge trap because you have to respect ABK and ledge jump dive kick and just like witch time in general. So sometimes the landings are a little bit like you think you can hit it, but you have to wait that split second longer, and then they do something different that you weren't expecting. Then you have to run across the entire stage and still have to respect the witch time and stuff like that. It can be kind of annoying against her. So yeah, I think Bayonetta's like a decent spot in the meta. Again, she's not top tier, she's not top 15 or whatever that people are saying sometimes, but she's good. She's a good character. Speaking of a character that deals you 0 to 60 in one hit, we are talking about the Riptide 2022 champion character being Tilde and Falco. Falco hits so hard. He has such good combos. He has amazing routes to do so much damage and kill opponents ridiculously early. I think characters that kind of hit you really hard, even if their neutral is a little bit simplistic, are really, really strong nowadays, because even though it is a little bit one-dimensional in terms of you think up tilt, of course that doesn't mean you have to only go for up tilt. You can still do chip damage with lasers and forward airs. He has a great out of shield option with neutral air. He has really strong footstool out of shield with footstool out of shield up B that does like 35 for some reason. He has amazing edge guarding. I just talked about with Bayo. Edge guarding is really important in my opinion because you can lessen the length of characters that live a long time. That's why characters, like certain characters that I will get into in the top tier, are really strong, because it's really hard to edge guard them. Kind of like Bayo has a decent recovery, decent disadvantage, not as good as Bayo's, but you know, has ridiculous killing, right? Because you have up tilt back air, up tilt up air, edge guarding, down tilt's a good kill move. I know that on the taller characters that are like light, like I think like Steve in Zero Suit, and I think there's a couple more examples. You can get fair drag down into up smash. His up smash is just good in general as an anti-air. It's so good, even if it doesn't maybe work in front of him that well. You can really only beat Falco if you have better combos than him, which aren't honestly a lot of characters, or you just keep him disadvantaged forever, or like edge guard him, which again, not a lot of characters currently are edge guarding, so he's just in a really good spot right now. We just talked about good killing. Let's go the opposite way with a character that kind of struggles to kill sometimes. We're gonna go with Sheik. The biggest problem with Sheik is the fact that if you play to trade with this character, it can be a struggle for her. A lot of characters can out trade Sheik, and of course, if she doesn't trade and she's just playing perfectly, yeah, she's amazing. This game is a lot about staying solid and not getting clutched on, and getting your solid kills, and Sheik has kill setups, of course. You have the updraft with the up airs, you have drag downs into down smashes and forward smashes, she can edge guard, she has Needle's bouncing fish, like she's not without killing. Sheik is better at killing by like a significant amount than like Bayonetta. But the problem is when you're playing neutral as Sheik, you are still struggling with characters that are swinging big hitboxes that will just raw kill you, right? Like Sheik doesn't have a raw kill move, she has kill setups. So if you aren't able to get those, those kill setups, then she struggles to kill. And a lot of characters can just be like, I'm just going to throw out a kill move. I'm going to throw out a Rob backer or a Steve backer or a Peach backer or a Snake up tilt or whatever random kill move you have. That can make it really hard for Sheik to contend in the neutral at high percents. She is really, really bad at last stop, last hit situations. She has to keep control the entire game, and in my opinion, her control isn't good enough for that because she doesn't have like crazy disjoints. She has her speed and has good frame data, but if someone just guesses your timing right, it's going to be a struggle. And again, that's to say that she's not top tier. She still has a ton of control in general. She has needles, good frame data, of course, so she can play around a lot of characters, especially the slower characters that are sometimes even scared to get hits. She can just dance around them and not care at all. But I do think the lack of just raw kill moves is going to put Sheik in high tier instead of top tier. Basically trade everything I just said that was good about Sheik, take it out, but then talk about a sword and raw kill moves. We're talking about Corrin, one of the most like results, burst of characters in recent times. This character has a lot, right? Solid neutral because good frame data plus sword. Does not have the mobility to dance around people, but is surprisingly mobile because of back air, and of course the large threat of pin. So if you have to respect a large threat range because of like full hop pin or ground pin, then you're kind of playing at a range where, Corrin's not really threatened, so she can run up on you or like short hop and pressure with forward air or neutral airs and stuff like that. She doesn't have good out of shield options in terms of frame data, but she does in terms of range, and this character does damage, and this character kills you. Every single move I feel like this character has either sets up for a kill or kills you because you have the kill moves in terms of pin and up air and back air, and of course like forward smash, and then you have the combo moves like nair and forward air and down tilt that are just kind of scary against this character. I feel like Corrin is good, right? Corrin's, in my opinion, a really good character after all these buffs, and a lot of the Corrin players are now showing it because the character's damage output is ridiculous, the consistency is really good, has one of the scariest 2-frames in the game that, of course, is non-committal as hell with pin, has decent edge guarding with back air. If someone has to recover low like a Ness or someone with like a slower recovery has to recover low, you can just downer them and trade stocks. You, of course, have the counter on some recoveries, although the counter's pretty bad in this game. I really feel like Corrin only struggles with heavy zoners, like characters like Samus and probably like Pac-Man, but at the same time, hit them once, keep them in the air forever because this character's advantage is really good, so you can always win, right? Like, Corrin is one of those characters that we kind of talk about, like, has just such good advantage, so it doesn't matter if your neutral is subpar in a matchup. Hit them once, deal them 50, keep them in the air or on the ledge because Corrin can do both really, really well. Are you okay? No, you're probably not if you hear that. We're talking about Terry next. Terry, honestly, like, this might be an underrating of Terry. I think this character is honestly getting kind of ridiculous. Of course, has a great comeback factor with Go because you have Power Geyser and Buster Wolf, which are just ridiculous. His character's damage output overall is really good. They're starting to optimize his combos, not in terms of just like jab, jab, power dunk, but in terms of like nairs and up airs getting like ridiculous combos. Nair into Burn Knuckle is a silly combo. He has really good ledge trapping. He has decent neutral. He has a good burst option in terms of crack shoot, so it's hard to camp against him. Has auto turnaround still, so you can't really cross him up, even though he doesn't have like the spam down tilts like Ryu and Ken do, so it's a little bit different. But yeah, this character has like good shield safety with his aerials. He has a decent amount of mobility. Literally, Terry's biggest flaw is the fact that he can't drop through platforms and hit you, so like if you poke him from under a platform, you have to be ready for him to run off platform and do a move, which is unlike a lot of characters that can drop through the platform and do a move. And if you don't really know what I'm talking about, I actually have a video about it that you can click up here. He's just a scary character, does a ton of damage, kills ridiculously early with or without Go, and then of course with Go he kills like ridiculously early, so yeah. This next character is of course still incredibly strong, but just kind of has lost favor in the meta and is more now of a counterpick character, but god, what a counterpick character he is. We're talking about Olimar. Dabuz and Shootone don't main this character anymore, Dabuz maining Rosa and Shootone maining Aegis, so Olimar kind of comes out as a counterpick in the two most prevalent Olimars, right? But that doesn't mean the character's not ridiculous, he's just really high maintenance in every single matchup, right? Struggles versus swords, which is the biggest thing. He struggles versus Cloud, versus Aegis, versus literally every sword character, not every sword character in the game, but most of the sword characters in the game. He's light, so he can get blown up by characters that just have really strong kill moves. He is really bad at getting off of the ledge, so if you are on the ledge versus strong ledge trapping characters, you can kind of struggle unless your name is Samus, because that matchup is like 80-20. But yeah, this character is honestly mostly used as a counter pick because Olimar has some really strong matchups in meta. Like, as I mentioned, Samus, has his spots here and there, does well versus Snake, like Zero Suit and Diddy Kong, but at the same time, he's not like beating the very top tiers in this game. Like, kind of just struggles with like the top tier of the game, like the top 10 or 12 characters, and of course, those are going to be the most common characters. You're struggling against most of meta, but are good on the people that do well against those top characters, that therefore they are good because of it, like Samus and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, Olimar is a great counterpick character in terms of his matchup spread, but he does struggle in a decent amount of matchups, so I don't know if he's good as a actual meta threat. So yeah, weird spot for the little guy. Speaking of little guys, we're talking about Ness. People always give me shit for putting Ness super high, but like, we have more Ness results than like ever before. We have Gact, who's been doing really well. We have Send, who's been doing really well. You have Atata, who's doing really well. You have Beastly, who is a Ness and Diddy Kong player who does really well. He has infinites, he has really ridiculous combos. Of course, he has amazing aerials and air drift and pressure and advantage. He has some of the best two-framing in the game with down smash and up smash, as well as PK Fire. He has good ledge trapping. He is one of the best advantage tools in the game in PK Thunder. Just like, you don't have to like hit yourself with it, just like the ball in the tail. It's so good. It can limit people so much. Literally the only flaw of Ness is a no double jump having to recover. That's it. Like, that's it. That's his only flaw. It's a big flaw. I mean, also, like, he can sometimes struggle with, like, swords that are going to keep him out with, like, Cloud back air, Lucina forward airs, and stuff like that. But at the same time, he does so much damage when he gets in that, honestly, those don't matter as long as they're not killing him. But the characters that hit him out of his double jump because you got greedy and wanted to, like, double jump PK Fire or double jump Magnet, they hit you out of it, and then suddenly now you're in disadvantage without a double jump. That is where the character struggles. But at the same time, I'm saying struggles, and by that I mean, like, oh, no, they're only getting top 3 and 5 at majors and regionals consistently. Like, Gact is doing ridiculously well in Japan overall, has a lot of strong wins, good placements. Send has been killing it in the regional game, of course, as always. Also did like pretty well at SmashCon. I think got like 13th or like 9th or something like that. Did very well. But yeah, Ness is a really good character. So yeah, I think he's super strong. I think it could be top tier. Just all these characters above, like, I think a lot of especially the next couple characters outside of the literal next one, people are going to be like, yeah, no, they're top tier, ESAM, you're dumb. So welcome to Smash Ultimate. Probably the placement that people will disagree with me the most in this tier, other than like maybe Terry being too low, is Captain Falcon being up here. We talk about advantage being so important in this game. Falcon has one of the best advantage states in the game. His up air combos into itself forever. He has ridiculous combos. He's one of the biggest benefactors of IDJ combos. He can kill you so early off of a side B, off of a nair, off of a grab. He has good edge guarding when it comes to his up B and his back air and his nair. He has good ledge trapping when it comes to his jab and his nair and his back air and like Falcon kick. He has random burst options that you have to be ready for. He has mix-ups in disadvantage. It's so actually hard to keep him disadvantaged because also this character trades. His hitboxes are pretty good, so he trades pretty frequently if you aren't a sword character. He is very fast, and people go like, oh, but his backdash, who cares about his backdash? One, you can just slingshot now, and it's not really that big of a deal. But two, it only matters if you're like playing the scramble in a defensive way. Just side B and get super armor instead of trying to dash back, and then you hit your opponent and kill them. People just don't pay attention to Japan and then listen to what Fatality says because he doesn't believe in the character that much, but this character's broken. He's so good. First, we're going to be talking about Byleth. Of course, MKLeo's Byleth, right? How many majors has this character won? Riziasu's still playing with this character a lot. There are a lot of Byleth players, whether they're mains or secondaries. The character is very, very popular in meta. Of course, his character strengths are ridiculous. The corner pressure of this character is dumb with nair into drop off forward air, back airs in general, forward airs in general. The spacing of this character is very good with the burst random nairs you have to be ready for, which can be very, very difficult for a lot of characters to deal with. Of course, this character is slow, so sometimes you will get walled out and kind of chased away, but it doesn't have the benefit of a counter like Incineroar does to, like, deal with the projectiles just by itself. Be like, oh, you can't shoot a Samus charge shot at me because I'll just counter it, if I'm just standing away from you. So Byleth actually does have to approach, of course, approach being generous because of the mid-range of the character with, forward air and back air and side B and stuff like that. This character has a very good edge guarding game because of the drop off into up B, just spiking characters or Joker, you know, getting up B into back air. Character kills you ridiculously well all the time. He has shield break setups. He has so much good stuff. The only problem with this character is, in my opinion, his disadvantage isn't great, and in my opinion, he's also not good at getting off the ledge as long as you respect like a little bit of distance. Byleth's biggest weakness is he doesn't have a good hitbox below him, other than, of course, down air, but that's down air, and it's really slow, so you can just kind of harass him there, force him to air dodge, and then hit him for it afterwards. And again, in a game where a lot of characters have ridiculous advantage states, I mean, Byleth honestly being one of them, even though it's like less broken than some other ones that we're going to talk about, especially in top tier, I think he just like loses the damage war sometimes. Of course, that doesn't mean you can't win. We've literally seen this character win more than we've seen most characters win, especially like the number of majors. Like Byleth has won more majors than almost any character in the world, probably being outclassed by like Steve, Joker maybe, because of Leo's like original Joker performance, but I think that's it. Like I think it's like second at worst. Really solid overall, with just a lot of cheese in terms of the shield breaks, in terms of the like up B edge guarding, you know, up B DI traps and stuff like that. Just a solid character to pick. Speaking of another solid character, one that I think people will actually be mad at me for that putting in high tier, we got Diddy Kong. I am not a 100% Diddy believer, and again, I think the character's like top, what is it, 25-ish, which is still really good. Don't get me wrong, this character is a very, very good character, but I do think the prevalence of enough of the characters that make him struggle make him not broken. It is really difficult for him to consistently do well when some of his worst matchups are some of the most relevant characters right now. Of course, like I know like his actual worst matchups are very niche, like Isabelle and Pac-Man and Villager. Those are obviously super rare, but characters like Steve and Sonic doing really well versus Diddy Kong make it so that like, oh, two of the most common characters in the meta are bad for him. That's not good, right? And of course, a lot of the times Diddy Kong is struggling in random defensive plays, right? Of course, like he does have Monkey Flip and he has Banana. His defense is really good, but I don't know. I feel like people just kind of still don't play around Monkey Flip correctly. And again, I'm saying this is like a Smash 4 and Brawl vet where like I'm just way more used to the move than a lot of people, but I don't feel like he has the like win button that a lot of other characters, especially in top tier, do. We're like, oh, this is just a broken strategy. Like Monkey Flip is good, don't get me wrong. It is a really strong move, but it has a lot more counterplay than a lot of other moves that are just kind of broken. So yeah, Diddy Kong rests here in my opinion. Has some really good matchups in meta, has some not really good matchups in meta. Well, again, if you want to put this character in top tier, I'm not gonna argue. I'm really not. Like this character's broken. He's so good. I do think he has a couple of too many flaws. Like people aren't grabbing down tilt enough. People aren't counterplaying like what he has enough. They're like so scared of him, and then that kind of forces them into shield. You know, like they're not like staying near ledge where you can kind of like fault. Like you're not really gonna get banana confirmed if you're near ledge because you'll just like go onto like the ledge. And granted, being on the ledge isn't great against Diddy, but it's better than dying to forward smash at 80. So. Next up is a slight demotion of this character. This is the first time I think I've put this character outside of top tier. He's always been like the very, very end of top tier. We're talking about one of the most prolific zoners in the game, Young Link. Young Link is, of course, ridiculous. You have arrow and boomerang and bomb and down tilt and forward air and back air and nair and up B, and he has a ton of good moves, right? He has a good advantage. He has really good control over the neutral game. He's not as good of a zoner as characters like Samus or Rob or Steve. He doesn't really have the timeout threat of, you know, the faster characters like Sonic. He doesn't have the ridiculous combos like a lot of the rushdown characters. So he's kind of good at a lot of things, right? He can tap into his really good buttons and his frame data. He can tap into his projectile war and his zoning and stuff like that. So he is always comfortable in most matchups, at least in a couple of areas. But the biggest problem with him is I don't think he has a good disadvantage, and he does not recover or get off the ledge well. So a lot of characters that have better combos than him are going to combo the absolute hell out of him. The characters that are good at edge guarding will edge guard the hell out of him. It's not easy to recover as Young Link, especially if the character is good at both dealing with up B and the tether. It's going to be hard for him to get back to stage. And of course, characters that will just juggle him will juggle him forever. What is he going to do? Like bomb and then throw it down, and then the opponent can catch it with the up air they're using to juggle him with? Like he doesn't have a stall and fall down air where he kind of just like gets back to the ground immediately and gets back to safety, or like, you know, gets hit and then has his resources back. He's not that type of character, so he has to play a very relatively honest disadvantage. He does have like B reversing arrows and boomerangs, but his airspeed isn't high enough for that to be super effective. But the character is still, of course, really strong. This is the first time I haven't put him in top tier. Yeah, this game's hard. I think I bumped up one character from this tier to top tier, and then Young Link just came down a little bit. But yeah, the character's really good. Of course, like ridiculously good, but you might sometimes get hit and die. Does this character suck? Is it all a meme? I don't know, but we're talking about Zero Suit Samus right now. Of course, Zero Suit Samus's results are largely based on, is Mars going to stuff and doing well, question mark? So the results are mostly contingent on one player. They're mostly related to one player. There are a couple of other good Zero Suits, of course. There's several in Japan. I know there's also like Opsign from Canada who's been doing pretty well. I think he's from BC. There are like some Zero Suits here and there doing decently well, but it's mostly Mars. And Mars just had a really good run at SmashCon, getting 7th. Zero Suit is like weird because she struggles with a lot of the meta characters. She struggles, in my opinion, with Kazuya and with Fox, even though Mars beat Light, but that's like a rivalry thing, but I still think Fox wins the matchup. But at the same time, like, is maybe Steve's worst matchup, question mark? At least beats Steve, like 100%, does well versus characters like Rob and Game & Watch and Sonic. Like, you have a lot of good spots for Zero Suit and a lot of bad spots. But of course, a lot of her bad spots can be mitigated with just running away better and playing a more defensive game, or also just like, hey, I got the hit, killed you at 30. Like, I edge guarded the Cloud, I edge guarded the Aegis, even though they're gonna be like out neutraling you most of the time. So Zero Suit is a very difficult character to play in neutral because you can't just short hop an aerial over and over again because her aerials aren't quite good enough for that. When you're playing well, when this character is in the zone, it is like she's one of the hardest characters to hit in the game. She's one of the hardest characters to keep in disadvantage, of course, because you have flip jump and down air. You have, you can't fast fall air dodge, which is actually like a unique flaw of Zero Suit. Literally, she's the only character that can't fast fall air dodge. Again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, check out this video, again, in this card. I would appreciate it. She, of course, has the down B spike. She has back air, forward air, side B. She has a lot of good options to randomly get early kills, but again, it's very precise, very difficult, and in a game where people can have like huge swaps in movement or huge hitboxes to kind of protect you, it's a little bit difficult to, you know, consistently just be on timing of a lot of these things. When it works, it looks great. When it doesn't, she can struggle a lot. And of course, that means just like play well. Everyone technically has to play well, because if you aren't playing well, you will lose to someone like Major, who's the best Ganon. He'll just destroy you, right? Like, that's gonna happen. But yeah, Zero Suit sucks. Asterisk, because she used to be top 5 and now she's top like 27 or something like that. But yeah, the character's still definitely a threat, but you know, mostly just hope you don't run into Mars. Oh, I forgot about Doorstop. This next character is a universally hated character that is also surprisingly difficult to play, and you won't understand that unless you've played her. We're talking about Min Min. Min Min is, of course, an incredibly polarizing character in terms of her matchups. She destroys probably the most characters in the game, or maybe like top 4 in terms of like just wins hardcore, because just out neutrals you, edge guards you, bing bang, you're done, no issue. Also gets destroyed by a lot of characters. You play against Min Min, you hit her, bing bang, you're done. You don't care about the neutral because you're too fast, or you just have a good enough combo game that it does not matter. Disadvantage and advantage are so important. Min Min's advantage, ridiculous, right? You're gonna hit everyone's landing with a ram into Dragon Smash. You're gonna be edge guarding, you're gonna be two framing, you're gonna be edge trapping. This character, when they're in control, are ridiculous, but when she's in disadvantage, it feels like the other character is totally in control. Because of the hyper focus on her neutral, you are often making decisions way earlier than your opponents are, in terms of like, I have to throw this move out here because if they run in and jump, I have to like ram and jump here to kind of hit their, you know, approach. Oh, actually they just dashed on the ground. I'm now above them. I have to land, and I have to like land on them because they ran under me, and now this is a struggle, right? Like, she has to make decisions so early against a lot of characters, and if you're wrong, you're going to be put in a really awkward spot that you have to then kind of overcompensate to either get back to the center or to avoid your opponent. And then if you get hit, or you're wrong, or they guess right, you might die, because this character just dies off stage so easily. It's hard for me to put her in top tier because she doesn't have like, I don't know, she doesn't have something ridiculous enough to like make up for that. Like, again, like say like Cloud, right? Like Cloud has limits, so his bad off stage, even though it's like a better recovery than a lot of people give it credit for, then you suddenly have a really good recovery because you have better airspeed and like limit climb hazard. Min Min doesn't have that. Min Min just gets it off stage and dies against a lot of characters. Even characters with the bad matchups against her can still kind of touch of death her. She just has the tools in neutral to win anyway, or to not really get put in that situation. But you still have to play really well as Min Min. This character is hard. Still high tier though. But yeah, that's going to end this tier and end this video. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. I know I'm doing these a little bit slower. Thank you all for watching again. Let me know down in the comments what you think about it. Again, the top tier is about to go crazy, so look forward to that, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.